everybody, and welcome to the Feminine Principle Podcast, Astrology for Authentic Living. My name is Mel with Energetic Principles.
And I'm Shawna with Neo-Feminine Astrology.
And in this episode, we will be discussing the astrology for the week of November 27th, and what we have titled, Let's Talk About a Revolution. So the purpose of this podcast is to give inspiration and guidance for this week with real-life examples of what to expect.
The three major aspects that we'll talk about today are Mercury conjunct Saturn and stationing retrograde in Sagittarius, which is all about real talk. We'll also talk about Mars in Libra opposite Uranus in Aries, which we've titled Don't Tell Me What to Do. And lastly, we'll talk about Jupiter trine Neptune, along with the full moon in Gemini, and the sun in Sagittarius square Neptune, which we've titled Living the Dream. So we have a lot of material to cover with you today. Please remember that some of these aspects will influence you more than others based on what's literally happening in your life right now and your personal astrological makeup. So notice what resonates with you most and always use your intuition and logic to decide what's best for you.
Yes, because you know you best. So yeah, Shawna, let's kick off this week's episode with a quick rundown of the moon's path through the zodiac and some of their minor aspects for all you astro geeks out there. Well, the moon, our dear lunar lady, is fully in her waxing phase as we start the week off in spiritual Pisces. On Tuesday, she makes her way into fiery Aries as she turns up the heat about midweek. Then on Thursday, which is Friday for some, she's going to move into sensual Taurus to help ground our emotions before moving into communicative Gemini on Saturday. We will then officially be on the countdown to Sunday's full moon, which, of course, we're going to talk about much more later on in this episode. And also of note, we have our gal Venus, who is going to be moving into big picture Sagittarius on Friday, December 1st at 1:14 a.m. Pacific time, which is 9:14 a.m. Universal Time and 7:14 p.m. Aussie Eastern Time. So, Shawna, share with us who you're featuring for this week's quotes.
So this episode features quotes and inspiration from Gloria Steinem, the American feminist, journalist, and social political activist. She is a great symbol for this week as we may feel as though we want to start our own personal revolution.
Yes. Revolt. No, I'm just kidding.
So we're excited to share some quotes of hers with you all and excited to jump into these transits. So one last note before we do, we want to give a shout out to our patrons, to all of our patrons. And then we have two new patrons that joined us this week. Shout out to Nina and Lisa. Thank you so much for becoming a patron.
Thank you so much, Nina and Lisa. We definitely appreciate it.
Yeah, and so if you want to be like cool like Nina and Lisa, you can become a patron. And when you do, you get the show notes every single week with all of the details of each episode. So that means the specific dates of the transits, the tarot cards that Mel pulls, the quotes that I've chosen, and reflection questions, and the weekly action item as well.
Yes, you get so much, but wait, there's more. Anna. Tell them about our new patron offering. That's just going to be so exciting, especially for people who aren't that knowledgeable about astrology.
Yeah, so we have just released, and you may have noticed this in your inbox if you are a patron, the Astro Basics cheat sheet. So this is a really cool, little simple, easy to use cheat sheet that tells you about the planets and the signs and the aspects that we talk about every single week. So it's a great resource if you love listening, but if you're not as well versed in some of the language that we use on the podcast to describe everything.
Yes, this is the perfect cheat sheet for you if you're like, trine, what's a trine? Sextile, what's a sextile? What do they mean when they're talking about Jupiter? It just gives you a quick go-to where you can be like, oh, it's this. And it'll help you put some of the pieces together a little bit more with just some basic astro language. So we thought that would be a good help. And real quick, speaking of your inbox, this is just a quick note for our patrons out there who are listening. If you have for some reason not received anything from us, please note that because we use a Gmail address, there is a chance that it could be in your spam box. So if you do ever sign up as a patron, you're like, where's the stuff? Check your spam box, because sometimes that, things can end up there. So just a quick FYI note about that.
Definitely. Yeah. And so if you would like, how do you become a patron?
Yes.
How does one do that? So to find out more, you can sign up to become a patron at feminineprinciplepodcast.podbean.com. And you can also find out more on our Facebook or Instagram page under Feminine Principle Podcast.
Yes, we got all the links that will take you right there and make it as easy as pie. So yeah, we got all that coming down in the works. And we also have our full moon live event, right, Shawna? Yes, we're going live.
Yeah, so we've had so much fun the last few times that we've done this, so we are doing it again.
Yes.
A full moon Facebook Live event to chat with you all live about the astrology of that day when there is the full moon in Gemini. And so this is happening on Friday, December 1st at 12:30 p.m. Pacific time, which is 8:30 p.m. Universal time, and Saturday, December 2nd at 6:30 a.m. Australian Eastern time.
Yes. So mark those calendars, join us. And if you have any questions, send them over and we will integrate that into our talking, what the subjects we talk about. And it'll be a little pre full moon, because I think the moon will still be in Taurus when we're there. So it'll be full moon prep and some other things that we'll be talking about. So we'd love for you to join us. All right, Shawna. So should we get started on these aspects we got here? We got definitely got a few going on this week. Active per usual. So let's start with our first set of aspects, or an aspect and a station. So we have Mercury, who's going to be conjunct Saturn, and then we also have Mercury, who is stationing retrograde. You hear it, people. Going retrograde. All right. So we are titling this Real Talk. So some exacts here. We have Mercury, who will be conjunct Saturn exactly on Monday, November 27th at 10:59 p.m. Pacific time, which is Tuesday, the 28th at 6:59 a.m. Universal time, and then 4:59 p.m. Aussie Eastern time. And that conjunction is going to happen at 27 degrees Sagittarius. And then Mercury, who will be going retrograde, will have its station on Saturday, December 2nd at 11:34 p.m. Pacific time, which is Sunday the 3rd at 7:34 a.m. Universal time, and then 5:34 p.m. Aussie Eastern time. And that will happen at 29 degrees Sagittarius, right at the end. So Shawna, kick us in with your first quote.
So this again is by Gloria Steinem. If you want people to listen to you, you have to listen to them. If you hope people will change how they live, you have to know how they live. If you want people to see you, you have to sit down with them eye to eye. And so I thought this was really perfect for this combination, because Mercury is in the sign of Sagittarius, and Sagittarius is a sign, typically, there's a lot more talking than listening. And I know this by personal experience because my South Node is in the sign of Sagittarius. And so one of my challenges is that I really have to challenge myself to ask more questions and to listen to people instead of just talking and saying what I think. And so I think that we may be feeling a lot of that during this time. And when Mercury comes into contact with Saturn, there is like this certain level of rigor around our mind and how it is that we communicate, how it is that we listen. And with Mercury going retrograde, we may be rethinking how it is that we do this exactly.
Yes, we'll be rereading everything, because that's the thing with Mercury retrograde is it's time to go back over. It's not a time to necessarily go on that impulse and start new things, especially when we have Mars opposite Uranus happening, which we'll talk about later in the episode. But yeah, Mercury retrograde is really about going back, rethinking, re-examining, reimagining, I'm sure there's more words we can think of for that. But I find it very interesting, Shawna, how we've had Mercury, who's going to make the Saturn conjunction early in the week, which we got Mercury, that thinking function, that intelligence, communication, our style of self-expression is basically going to be merging with Saturn. It's going to be around some discipline and some structure. And so I feel like there's all these Sagittarius concepts that are happening right now with Mercury and then Saturn that's been there this whole time, these kind of big picture vision stuffs, rethinking our own beliefs. I feel like that there is a part of this retrograde has to do, in my mind, with the dance it's going to be doing with Saturn in a conjunction, where it's going to, we basically have our first pass early in the week, where we get that Saturnian action, where, certain things might come in, because we talked about this last episode, where we were mentioning how right before Mercury goes retrograde, especially the week leading up to it, and those key station points, a lot of times things come in to our awareness that we are to chew over, to mull over during the 3 weeks that we have that re-examining phase. So I'm wondering, Shawna, if that Mercury conjunct Saturn is really going to put those reconsiderations into place, so, especially having to do with planning around our big picture vision, and maybe we are even tested to the limitation of our own beliefs through that Saturn. So what do you think about those things and how that might come into play?
Yeah, I definitely agree, Mel. I think that the contact with Saturn is an essential part of this Mercury retrograde period. And I see it as a time where our resolve, our commitment, our devotion will all be challenged, and we'll be asked to really put in the time to really to do the work. And this may feel a little bit uncomfortable. It may be very motivating. I think it depends on what's happening in our lives right now. But yeah, I think it's definitely a more somber and serious tone, and a time where we may be reevaluating our commitments, and because of the commitment, because of the Saturn piece, and then why are we committed to the things that we're committed? Does that align with our belief system and our ideology, which is the Saturn piece?
Yes, and yes. And that's the thing too, is when we're having these Saturn contacts, and we're in this Mercury retrograde, where a lot of times with retrograde, certain blockages do come up, and for our own good to basically work through things, or there's certain delays. I mean, that's what Mercury retrograde is essentially known for a lot of the time, is delays around certain things that are mercurial, whether it's as simple as traffic, or getting or there's a delay in maybe getting some communication that you're looking for to maybe go forward with some of these visions and plans. And so I guess what I'm saying is, don't get tricked into any type of rush based or any type of rush to either receive something, or even to get out of some type of commitment because it's not panning out quite how you see. This is I feel like this Mercury retrograde, more so than normal, is going to be somewhat a test of patience, just because there is those Saturn contacts, and it's stationing so close to Saturn, only a couple of degrees away. And so, Mercury retrograde really tests our patience, our mental patience around certain things. And that's where we learn basically not to fly off certain handles. So let's talk about Mercury retrograde real quick, Shawna. And how long does this last? What is this?
When does it end?
When does it end? Yeah, that's the question. When does it never? It keeps coming back. No. Nothing to be scared of ever. If anything, it's really enlightening if you allow it to be. So just some exacts here. We entered the shadow period of Mercury retrograde, which the shadow means it's reached the degree that it will move back to during the retrograde. So since the 14th of November, we've basically been in the shadowy Mercury period. And I've seen people already come up and be like, oh, why is this working? And blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't know if you've seen that, Shawna. Have you seen anybody that's already even like,
a little bit of that. And I actually, it's just coming to me now. I'm realizing that the process of finishing up my moon journal, that felt very Mercury Saturn, because I was like late and I had to work really hard to get it all done on time, and there was pressure, but I I put in the work and now I'm happy about it. But yeah, that was definitely like a foreshadowing.
Yeah, exactly. So we're foreshadowing. Nice, Shawna. So we're in the shadow phase, and then the station retrograde. Retrograde will happen on December 2nd and 3rd, depending where you are. And so we're going to be in that retrograde motion, that apparent backward moving motion, until it stations direct, which is dun, 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 the 22nd and 23rd of December. So mark your calendars. Those will be sensitive days as well. And it won't be until January 10th that Mercury will then leave that shadow, that end shadow period. So we're looking at about mid-November to mid-January, where we have mercurial things that are being re-examined, and especially in the first few weeks of December.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, I'm reminded of the Mercury retrograde that we had in the spring. I think it was around April, where Mercury was conjunct Uranus. And how, at least I'm curious what you think about this, Mel, but from my experience just personally, and then talking to other people, that Mercury retrograde period seemed to have this Uranian kind of element, where it was like more almost like an anxious kind of energy, and lots of ideas and lots of lots of innovation coming in, but almost kind of like at a very high frequency, where it was like so much. And so I'm curious to see how we feel during this Mercury retrograde period, when Mercury is with Saturn, which is a very different energy. It's very grounding and stabilizing, lots of responsibility, but much more stable in contrast to Uranus.
Yeah. And let's not forget that our last Mercury retrograde was dancing over the eclipse point in early September, or late August, early September. And so, our last couple retrogrades have been very, I don't want to say doozies, because if anything, they've produced some great things out of them. And I felt that this year's retrogrades, at least for me personally, and just could be where I am in my life, but I found them very very uplifting in the end, and the things that I challenged within myself, especially mentally, and every one of us can do these. We all have room for improvement as far as our minds are concerned, in other areas of life, of course. But I really feel like those going back moments of both of those retrogrades were very beneficial to me in the long run. I don't know about you, Shawna, but so I'm hoping that this one will be it too. Like maybe those first two retrogrades this year were helping to hit the nail on certain heads. Like the first one in Aries, I was like, all right, we're going to hit that nail first. And then the solar eclipse comes in with the fixed signs. We're going to hit it even harder. Now we're in the mutable. So we're basically, so who knows? Maybe we're even finishing up certain things that, re-examining things that we've been working on all year to put in more structure around just these visions and our beliefs around how we are getting to where we're going. Because I feel like, and we're going to be talking about this going forward. We have Mars opposite Uranus. That'll be the next segment. And then we got a full moon. Like things are moving here. Things are definitely moving.
I agree. Definitely.
And just a quick note, because the earliest aspect I think we have in the week is that, so we basically start the week off with Mercury conjunct Saturn. That's the sobering tone of the week. And we have the moon in late degrees of Pisces at that time, which is actually conjunct Chiron, and then square Mercury and Saturn. So we have like kind of this tense energy going on with the moon. So I almost feel like that's bringing up old, because Chiron's associated with, I mean, loosely they call him the wounded healer. But a lot of times when there's Chiron contacts, there's either some type of pain or maybe some type of even like personal blockage that comes up that we just basically address. And I'm wondering if maybe the challenge through this kind of Pisces energy is to maybe to like let go of certain things that are kind of holding back those plans and or those beliefs, so that we can challenge that Mercury Saturn action. So what do you think about that, Shawna? Like that square from the moon and Chiron at the same time?
Yeah, that definitely adds a more somber, an even more somber feeling. And to me, it speaks of the need for self-acceptance, acceptance of what is, and possibly like there may be some sadness or some remorse around that. But that's okay, like I think the moon and Chiron being there, and especially in the sign of Pisces, there may be this like wavering between being sad about something, but then like it's okay. I can we have to start somewhere, and so that's what I would say for this point in time is, especially earlier in the week, asking ourselves, okay, what is my reality, and how can I be okay with that, so that I can start where I am now, so that I can move forward.
Yes. And as you're saying that, Shawna, I think that maybe that is actually one of the key tickets to some of the things we're going to be mulling over during the retrograde period. Because that's a pretty doozy to Mercury right before we go retrograde. So I would look for the weekend. You're probably going to be listening to this on the weekend or Monday. But I would look to these time frames right now to look for some of those clues that we might be going over when we do enter the retrograde for most of December. So okay, well, let's talk about these tarot cards that we have, our mercurial tarot cards. And I found that they were very perfect because I drew the temperance card as the focus and the Daughter of Swords as the grounding. And I found temperance to be perfect because temperance is what represents Sagittarius. And we have Daughter of Swords, which is, of course, the beginning of this mercurial, air-like energy. So there's a couple of different ways this can manifest, of course. But, I really think it's around us seeking balance and moderation around maybe some certain idealistic tendencies that we have in our plans of sorts, or something, especially since that moon in Pisces is going to be challenging it. Maybe Saturn is bringing the reality hammer down in a sense to be like, okay, let's look at what we got going on here and balance our own idealism with our plans so that we're able to carry on with them without getting frustrated or impulsive in some way. And yeah, so that was my first inclination, but I would love to hear what you think, Shawna, of these two cards put together.
Yeah, so I agree. I think it is definitely a call for balancing between what our ideal is, and the Daughter of Swords makes me think of this innocence, this idealistic innocence where it's like, this is going to be amazing and this is my vision. And then temperance is like, well, let's balance it out. Let's have one piece of our heart, out in the ethers, and then another piece of our heart here in the material world, and where there are limitations. And it feels important to balance those out so that we don't lose either one, because the thing with Saturn is, if there is limitation, sometimes we can just be like, well, fuck it, I'm not even going to try because it's too hard. Yeah. And so I think these cards are saying, don't do that. Like, no, still keep your vision, but be practical about it. Have, one piece in your head and one piece in your heart, or, one foot, your head in the clouds and feet on the ground, so to speak.
I think that's an excellent point, Shawna, because that is the thing is like the temperance has to do with patience. And then that daughter of swords, that's the thing is they have a great idea, but the issue is keeping the pace. So a lot of times that you go, oh, I'm full of great ideas. I'm doing absolutely nothing with them. So I feel like part of this, to play into what you're saying basically, is to have patience around, especially if you have a new project going on. If it's promising, you just have to keep the pace, go forth with the moderation and don't give up. Cause that's another thing about Saturn. We're talking about, a discipline and devotion towards something. And you can't just give up, especially if things don't, I look idealistic like you want them to, because that Saturn would say that is not life. Life does not work in ideals for the most part, and that's okay, because a lot of times our ideals may be off base for the long haul. So I definitely say this is all about some moderation and patience, and also just to throw it out there, because we do have a Gemini full moon coming, which we're going to talk about later in the episode. But I would say a couple things is that we might need to have more patience around our own ability to be on the offense or the defense. Because that's the thing with the daughter of swords, and especially when Mercury stations and it gets real slow. Sometimes, things, especially in a fire sign, if we're fired up about something, we say something that we're like, whoop. So just be careful if you're like overly defensive. If you find yourself overly defensive about something or on the offense real quickly. Or even like if you find yourself in a scenario where you're like hearing gossip outside yourself and it's affecting you somehow, because that's another thing too. So I would just say overall, refrain from any extreme mental judgments during this week. And I think you'll be fine. So yeah. Some questions to take away for all this Mercury action. I would ask myself, with Mercury going retrograde until December 23rd, how can I best use this time for some inner real talk? Are there any beliefs that need re-examining? I would ask, is there any new information popping up this week that has caught my attention? Are there certain topics now up for reconsideration? And then lastly, I would ask, with so much mental stimulus happening, how can I effectively process all these ideas? Is there any idealism that needs balancing, or any patience that needs to be implemented into my plans? So some food for thought. All right, Shawna, so let's go into our next electrifying aspect we have here. And that is Mars, who will be opposing Uranus. And what we are titling, Don't Tell Me What to Do. So some exacts on that. We are going to have that opposition on Friday, December 1st at 2:04 a.m. Pacific time, which is 10:04 a.m. Universal Time, and then 8:04 p.m. Aussie Eastern Time. And that opposition will happen at 25 degrees Libra and Aries. So, Shawna, kick us in with your next quote.
So this, again, is by the activist Gloria Steinem. Like art, revolutions come from combining what exists into what has never existed before. Law and justice are not always the same. When they aren't, destroying the law may be the first step toward changing it. And so I thought this was really quite perfect for Mars, which is about asserting, and it's about moving into action in the sign of Libra, which is about justice, but also art and beauty. And then making this opposition to Uranus. Uranus is about revolution, it's about innovation, and Uranus can also denote where something needs to be completely transformed, where it needs to be thrown away, so to speak, so that new change and new innovation can come into place.
Yes. And I am interested to see what's going to happen during these times, just because, just to give a little background on this particular opposition, we've had a lot of planets that have opposed Uranus in like a chain succession, basically. And it all started with that Jupiter, when Jupiter opposed Uranus back in late September. When a lot of us were making a lot of different moves to try new things in our life or to start new chapters, turn the leaf, so to speak. So it's interesting to see that this is the last, chain in the, or the last wheel. I don't know. There's something I could say there that would add to that. But what do you think about that, Shawna? How we basically had Jupiter, our hope around change and starting new, fresh things in our lives. We've had the sun, who's put awareness around what it is we want to kind of like kick off and start, build new foundations. So we basically had every personal planet. So it's almost like our action self, this Mars-oriented, assertive nature, is now the last one coming along down the line. So maybe that we could act on all these things. What do you think about that? And basically what's led up to this point?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's very insightful, Mel. It's like we've had all of the other personal planets. We've had Mercury, the Sun, Venus, and then Jupiter, which are all, we could think of this as all little pieces of ourselves that are receiving innovation from Uranus.
Yes.
Our thought process, which is Mercury, our soul, which is the sun, Venus, which is our relationships, and then Jupiter may have really opened us up to new things, new possibilities, and new opportunities. I spoke with a lot of people that had just these really synchronistic opportunities come in, and I see Mars. It's really appropriate that it's the last personal planet that will make this opposition in this cycle. And Mars, it helps us act. It helps us assert things. It gives us I feel like a little bit of oomph to take advantage of all of this innovation. And I think it really depends on where we're at and what we're working on. And I think the common theme, though, is that we're going to feel fired up to change something. There's going to be this sense of urgency, maybe.
Yes, there will definitely be a sense of urgency, I think, because both Mars and Uranus are, known for being can be a bit impulsive. So this is like the epitome of impulse that can come up during pretty much this whole week, because we've been inching towards this transit. Even last week, it started to show its face. So we're going to feel that all week. We're probably going to feel this little bit of tension. And I love the analogy that Shawna and I were able to piece together last week with the idea of the tension from the bow, setting up a bow and pulling back the arrow basically to aim. And then just that tension that either releases an on-time fire or maybe a little early premature fire. So just know that if you're feeling that any type of anxiety, because this can bring up anxiety for sure. And if you're feeling some type of leap, just be aware of being overly impulsive. But at the same time, if you haven't had enough impulse in your life and haven't been making those kind of Libran decisions that Mars has been moving through, acting upon, making choices, chances are you might be pushed at this moment from a breakthrough, either within yourself or outside of you, where people maybe push you into innovative action, since it is an opposition. So what do you think about that, Shawna, with the fact that it is an opposition and how, chances are we could be interacting with something outside of ourselves?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it could go a variety of different ways. What really is interesting to me is that Mars is in the sign of Libra. And so that emphasizes the theme of the opposition being maybe something happens outside of ourselves. The fact that Mars is in Libra is also maybe social interactions or relationships may be involved in this in some way. And so whenever I talk to anyone that has some type of Uranus transit happening, and especially something like this where it's a personal planet opposition, it's like, okay, what is the most appropriate action so that we can innovate but not throw the baby out with the bathwater? Like,
Yes.
How do we make a change but not burn a bridge? And so that's what I would really be thinking about this week, is because speaking from personal experience, when I've had a Uranus transit to my son, I've like thrown away some stuff that I'm like, man, I wish I hadn't been so hasty. And, I think that's a part of the process, is to reinvent, to sometimes try something radically new. But at the same time, I would really want to temper that with making sure that we're cool with the long-term repercussions of whatever it is that we're doing.
Yes. And you know what, Shawna, maybe we are. And the thing is maybe we are cool about it, because it's like, when this opposition happens, the moon is actually in Taurus, where we're grounding certain things, and able to be productive and build in the material realm, or even like start some type of building. And it's trine Pluto. So we're like creating something of, like something that is, it's like the rising from the ashes of last week. Basically, we've now risen from the ashes, and we're like flowing with this energy of like rebuilding certain things in our lives. And of course, we're going to be going over all these things with Mercury going retrograde. But I feel like, especially with Mars, who's in Libra, which is not a great it's not a great place for Mars. Mars is in its detriment there, and it's in a place where it's peregrine right now. And peregrine means it's not making any contact. It's not really doing anything, or it's having a hard time doing something. So I feel like part of it has maybe like a push to start to solidify a lot of these things that we've been talking about earlier, and like how this is the last chain of command here, and Mars is prompting us for some sort of innovative action in our lives. So I'm wondering if the Taurus moon can help ground that, especially in that trine to Pluto, so that we can transform certain areas of ourselves to allow for that breakthrough, and make the choice to have that breakthrough. So what do you think about that, Shawna?
Yeah, I agree 100%. I love that the moon is in Taurus and the trine to Pluto. It helps us just bring everything down to earth, to chill out a little bit if we are feeling a little bit restless. And I think another resource is the fact that we have that Mercury Saturn contact earlier in the week. I think that may also, like, even though, we talked about Mercury and Saturn being a more somber moment, I think that may be a resource for us to draw on, so that maybe, I think that we may be feeling more grounded than we would otherwise if we didn't have these two in combination.
That's a good point. I feel like we're grounded on either end, and the hot spot is going to be Tuesday and Wednesday, essentially, when we have that Aries moon, and then the moon is going to pass over Uranus. So basically, the moon is going to pass over Uranus probably on Thursday, I want to say, and that's when we're probably going to feel this aspect the most, and we're going to feel that heat behind it. So Wednesday and Thursday might be those kind of defining moments where you start to feel like that bow pull back. Your feelings like, I mean, what do you think about that, with that Aries kind of energy before our Taurus calm? The calm before, no, not the calm before the storm. It's the calm after the storm, I guess.
Yeah, the calm after the storm, the eye of the storm, any of those. Yeah, I agree. I think, Aries moon, when the moon is in Aries, it's like dynamic. I don't know about you, but I feel like I'm getting shit done, and I'm doing things, and I'm moving. And so, yeah, I think we may be feeling like really amped up, and then a sense of maybe exhale and release, and not even like relaxation, but just like, oh, okay, I know what I need to do, and I'm going to do it.
Yes. Like more emotional stability around all the things that have happened.
Yes.
It's like stabilizes the being a little bit. It's like, whew, okay.
Yes.
Take that in. Let's ground that and bring it down here. So yeah, there's ultimately though, Shawna, I really feel like this is just really a breakthrough around this, whatever issue has been triggered over and over again in these oppositions. And it just depends on where it is in your chart, what areas of life have been, painted for these planets in this position. So let's talk about some of these tarot cards, because I think that they add another interesting little level here. And that is, I drew the Father or King of Swords as the focus, and then the Devil as the grounding. And I really feel it could be as simple as, just remaining detached and objective around any potential negativity or self-defeating intentions we might have at this time, especially coming after that Saturn, Mercury conjunction, and Mars not being in the best place for it to necessarily act and make choices. We might have to pull within this inner mental reserve we have that will allow us to make decisions based from a more objective place than the subjective kind of potentially negative mindset or a fearful mindset that might keep us from being able to act with our intellect in a way. So Shawna, what do you think about that? And what do you think about these two cards together?
Yeah, so I agree. I think this is a call to stay within our own inner authority. And this may very well just be a perception shift to remember that we have options, that we are in control of the situation, even though it may not always feel that way. I think that's something that these are encouragement to always fall back on, and to not get caught up in power struggles or battles, or being like, oh, like I can't do that because of blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, okay, bring it all back. And where can you choose? How can you, I think it's also about like mentally detaching from things that we don't need to worry about, or that don't really have as much control as we think that they do.
Yeah, exactly. Because essentially we have to become, decisive by taking the emotion out of it. We're like, let's decide with our minds a little bit more here, to help us break out of like anything that, especially if we're stuck in certain situations, which, Mars opposing Uranus could be a springboard to get out of something that you're stuck in, to some extent, and to break through that barrier. And in order to do that, we have to look at our fears more rationally so that we can make these choices to move away from any unsatisfactory obligations or situations we may be stuck in. But I do have to say, because we're talking about Mars and Uranus, once again, these impulsive planets, facing off against each other, I would say that you make sure that you're making mature choices that benefit the long run, rather than that short-term gratification. Like if you're going to make a decision, stop for a second and be like, okay, is this going to suit me in the long run? Is this got the potential behind it? Or am I just looking for something because I just want to gratify myself in this moment? And this is really either going to not lead anywhere or possibly backfire on me. So just make sure your decisions are, well researched, and build your confidence within the decision-making process by like really sussing out, is this for my long-term good? Is it for my short-term gratification? And of course, always err on the side of, high ethical standards when we're talking about Libra as well, too. So these choices you make have to be aligned with your own ethics as well, or hopefully the high side of those.
Yeah, definitely. 100% agreed.
Yes. So let's go for that long-term benefit. All right. So some questions to take away from Mars and its opposition to Uranus. I'd ask myself, with the urge for impulsiveness in the air, can I take the time to make the proper considerations before taking action? If I've already done the thorough prep, will I then allow myself to take the leap? I'd also ask, are my actions aligned with long-term benefit or short-term gratification? Are the choices I'm making fair to myself and fair to others? And then lastly, I would ask, can I move past life's obstacles by aligning myself with innovative action? Can I change my own rules to achieve a breakthrough?
Nice.
I really feel that ties in maybe with the a lot of mercurial considerations we might be having to help us move on through and innovate. All right, so let us talk about our last whole menagerie of aspects we have going on here. And we're going to talk about Jupiter, who is trine Neptune, our full moon in Gemini, and then the sun, who is also square Neptune. And what we are titling Living the Dream. And so some exacts on that, get your pencil handy or become a patron. We have the Jupiter will be trining Neptune on Saturday, December 2nd at 6:22 p.m., which is Sunday the 3rd at 2:22 a.m. Universal Time. That first time was Pacific time, by the way. And then 12:23 p.m. Aussie Eastern Time. And that trine will happen at 11 degrees Scorpio and Pisces. Then we have our full moon in Gemini, which will be exact on Sunday the 3rd, December 3rd at 7:47 a.m. Pacific time, which is 3:47 p.m. Universal time, and then Monday the 4th at 1:47 a.m. Aussie Eastern time. And that full moon will be at 11 degrees Gemini. And then lastly, we have that sun square to Neptune, and that's going to happen on Sunday, December 3rd at 3:44 a.m. Pacific time, which is 11:44 a.m. Universal Time, and then 9:44 p.m. Aussie Eastern Time. And that square will happen at 11 degrees Sagittarius and Pisces. So Shawna, kick us in with your last quote.
Mm-hmm. So this again by Gloria Steinem. Without leaps of imagination or dreaming, we lose the excitement of possibilities. Dreaming, after all, is a form of planning. And so this quote, actually is a really nice quote for all of the things that we talked about, but I liked it for this particular cluster of aspects because she speaks about imagination and dreaming, which is about which relates to Neptune and Jupiter and this sense of possibility and imagination and creativity and all of these things. And then also the excitement of possibilities. I think that we could relate that to Jupiter, Neptune, but also the full moon in Gemini. Gemini wants all of the options, all of the possibilities. And then, the dreaming, after all, is a form of planning. I think that actually ties into some of the aspects that we were talking about earlier as far as the mercurial vibe as well. So
yeah. I felt like all the quotes this week, Shawna, I have to give you kudos to the ones you picked because it's not even like they were talking about like just the one segment. It was like summing up the whole week as a whole. Like they seem to speak to many of these different areas. So yeah, we're basically living the dream. We've got these, we're back to these Neptune transits. And there's been a lot of Neptune in the last month or so. Right? Am I right about this or am I in Neptunian confusion? Yeah. So we have been, triggered time and time again around, our Neptune impulses, like what we are creating, what we're inspired by, what kind of like that force that drives us to work towards our own ideal, because that's essentially what a dream is it's an ideal that lives inside of us. And sure, certain dreams don't quite pan out the way we want them to, but that's okay as well. We still have to dream, because if we don't dream, then what's going to pan out? It is your active ability to plan, in a sense. And I love that quote, Shawna, because it really does tie into that, Mercury conjunct Saturn, with all this Neptune influence, coming down into the works. So we are using that, especially that Sagittarius and that Pisces energy to basically tap into all these dreams, these visions, these big picture ideas that we have. It's all this kind of like up above, like kind of umbrella looking down kind of nebulousness that we are turning into form, I think. And so, there's a lot going on here. And it's all happening at one time, which I find interesting. So what do you think about that, Shawna, that we basically have this full moon in Gemini, that is just apexing at a time where it's Neptune central.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, we basically have a full moon squaring Neptune because the Sun square Neptune piece, it happens so close to the full moon, and a full moon is created by the sun and the moon. And so it's like we have a full moon squaring Neptune. So full moon is about culmination. It's about celebration. Being in the sign of Gemini, this may even be where we get new ideas or new insights, new possibilities. Things start to click into place in our brain. And then Neptune may make this, or may illustrate where things are a little bit more dreamy, maybe a little bit more foggy. And so I'm really curious to see how we're feeling, because full moons are a time of intensity where emotions are running higher and we have more to do, or we're thinking about more. There's things are brought to the surface as far as our emotional nature. And then when we layer Neptune on top of that, it's like it's coming to mind is the image of if you draw something or you paint something and then you sprinkle water on top of it, and the paint or the marker or whatever that you've done, it just kind of blurs a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like that's what's happening maybe throughout the week, is we're really feeling this Mercury Saturn, and we start to draw a picture. Maybe we use like a pen or pencil or charcoal or something. And then towards the end of the week, when we have Neptune come in, it's like we sprinkle water on it and it just kind of softens a little bit.
Yeah. I love the image. I can see it perfectly. And that's a great point, Shawna. We have to take that point and know that there is a bit of dreaminess to this weekend. There is a bit of tapping into spirit and the higher self, and having certain things come out and present themselves before us. But at the same time, with that all that Neptune energy and then a full moon, we also I think just to err on the caution of in the real world, just because we have so much of a fogginess, and then we have that Gemini who just loves to talk or maybe travel around or whatever. And we have Mercury retrograde that's happening at the same time, and we have Mars opposing Uranus. So we have a jam-packed end of the week, basically. And so I know we'd like to talk about higher ways that this can manifest, which we will, and I'll get back there in a second. But I guess what I'm saying is just have some patience, have some take in that temperance, that moderation that we were talking about in that first Mercury segment, because these are the types of, when we have full moons, there's an increase in hospitals for a reason is what I'm saying. Not that anything's going to happen to anybody, but all I'm saying is basically slow your roll. Just slow your roll this weekend and take everything, kind of at a snail's pace, the best you can, just because there's so many factors going on this week, that if you just kind of rush into things, which a full moon in Gemini, I have a feeling could, because Gemini, sometimes a Gemini shadow reaction is like a knee-jerk reaction to be, and it can be a little bit frantic and rushing through certain experiences and skipping steps as we go along, as we feel that, full moon energy. So I just want everybody to be like, just care about our peeps. So just take a minute this weekend and don't try to rush through anything particularly, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I agree. Slow your roll is good advice, especially for this weekend.
Because slow that roll. Because with Neptune, that's the thing, and especially with Neptune square the sun, and making a T square, a tense aspect, to this full moon, there may be a part of us that it feels lost in a sense, or uncertain about, what the right action to take is, or the right path that we're going on. So there's I feel like there might be a lot of self-doubt that can maybe sneak in to this weekend. And it's not anything that's going to necessarily like push anything over a certain edge. It's more like everything that, like something culminating within us that is calling us to maybe develop some more confidence around, some of the things we're going for and actions we are putting into place, especially with that Mars opposition to Uranus, and to build our confidence so we can get past any uncertainty or self-doubt that might be happening at this time. And that's the whole purpose of Mercury retrograde too, because as these things come in, we're going to be re-examining whatever that uncertainty or doubt might be in my mind, or whatever inspiration comes in, or taking out the uncertainty around our inspiration to be able to pursue certain things, I guess is what I'm saying. Does any of that make sense, Shawna? And
yeah. Yeah, it does, definitely. I think I like what you say about the working with confidence, because with Neptune, there is a possibility for, with Neptune and the sun being an aspect together, there's a possibility for our ego taking a blow sometimes, because Neptune does dissolve things, and it asks us to let go of the ego when it's an aspect to the sun. And so sometimes that means we're like, man, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I'm good enough. Who am I? All of these questions. And then I think that's emphasized by Uranus, by Mars opposite Uranus, and Mars being in the sign of Libra. So and then also, of course, Mercury being retrograde. It's so this whole week is like maybe we may be questioning, am I good enough? Is this, who am I to do this, and those kinds of things. And so I think that's a natural thing that may happen during this week, but it doesn't have to be a bad thing. And just stuff that we may be feeling and things that come up, and then it moves through it and passes throughout the week. So I would say if we are feeling that, to know that it's just a part of the cycle and it will pass.
Exactly. I love that, Shawna, because maybe that's the reason these things come up, so that you can strengthen these things during the Mercury, Mercury retrograde. It's like, do I really believe in myself? Do I really believe in my vision? Because it's the thing is, if you don't fully believe, if you kind of believe, but there's a part of you that still has that uncertainty or that doubt, you put holes into that creation, and you can't really bring it forth the way you might want to. And we don't have to bring it forth all right now. That's the thing too. Let's keep in mind, this is like we're making certain steps, but we're also about to go into some considerable re-examination around our beliefs and our way that we express ourselves in the world, which in turn is pretty much fostered by those beliefs. It's all connected. So yeah, I think that can definitely be something up there that's for consideration, especially like you said, Shawna, with that Sun square Neptune, where we can take a little blow in some way, and it's not a bad thing. It's just to strengthen ourselves, because ultimately Jupiter is trining Neptune. So I feel like, the Jupiter, which is like growth and expansion and having hope and, like really looking at this big picture and like hoping for the best, is aligning with the inspiration that we're getting and the intuitive and creative input that's coming in. So I feel like that we're really supported there, but our own awareness and our own mind has to get on board first, so that we can then tune flow with all this, to flow to this spiritual growth that we're essentially trying to manifest. So yeah, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think you're totally on target there. The Jupiter trining Neptune to me says there is no shortage of support. There's no shortage of possibilities and opportunities. And the more that we talk about this, just looking at the bigger picture, it's like, yeah, the universe is supporting us. There's little things like synchronicity or kismet that may be happening. And, we have that spiritual support, and we may just be working through these issues of self-confidence, self-assertion, self-concept. And it's more like maybe struggling with how we feel about ourselves. But at the same time, we may have all of these, we may have a lot of support that we need to draw on. And we can do that by getting ourselves as much as we can in a supportive mental and emotional state.
Yes. And I totally agree. And, and we might be able to do that through some meditation right now, because Neptune's up. So maybe if you can do some connecting, if you can slow down enough with that Gemini full moon to do that, some solid inspiration might come out right now to help, strengthen your own faith in yourself, essentially. But okay, Shawna, we got to talk about this full moon, and we have to talk about the fact that the full moon and its ruler, Mercury, is basically going retrograde the same day. Mm-hmm. So we have a full moon square Neptune with the full moon's ruler in a very, very powerful yet unpredictable position. So what do you think about that? The fact that Mercury is in a unique spot for a Gemini full moon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I wonder if this full moon may be more, I don't know, like I want to say high energy, but that's not quite the word. It's like we may have more like where we're really thinking about things more. There may be a possibility for more confusion.
Yes.
Just to be frank.
Yes.
I don't think that has to be the case, but it's more like, I guess, like more confusion and maybe more questioning. Like there's more that's up for debate versus our full moon that we had previously, where there may have just been like lots of feelings and lots of things coming up. I feel like this full moon, the fact that it's in the sign of Gemini, which is about communication and sharing ideas and giving and receiving information, and that information, Mercury, is retrograde in the last degree of the sign. And so it's like, what is this information good? How do I feel about this information? Is this the right information? There's so much of it. And, wait, this information is wrong. Like, I think all of these things may be coming up for us.
Yeah, I have a feeling that is definitely a part of it, because when we're talking about Mercury retrograde, the station of it, and Neptune involved, something's not right. And that's okay. And maybe it's not even that it's not right. It just means that it's not necessarily clear. And that's a very Neptunian thing. And that's the thing with Gemini, and maybe how this plays into the full moon, because, the full moon, it is a time of celebration and release of sorts, but it also creates tension. And a lot of times anxiety. And so I feel like this Gemini full moon, because Gemini has a really hard time with uncertainty and any type of confusion, because it wants to figure it out. Like Gemini's like, I can't deal with not knowing this. Like, let's go look at the facts. Let's figure this out. Let's do what we need to fully understand this. And I won't stop, and I'll build myself into a frantic frenzy around something I don't understand, because, that's just the way Gemini is. So I think that what could create some tension during this full moon is the fact that there is some confusion in place, or there is that uncertainty or that self-doubt that leads to some type of anxiety because we don't fully know. So I would say like the best thing you could do here is to like if you feel intense, just don't act to act. and let yourself sit in that confusion, even if it is uncomfortable for a second, because confusion means you're onto something. You don't know, you don't know something, but you're open to receiving the answer for it or sussing it out. So just remain open, sit with any type of confusion that comes in, and then just go from there. But ultimately, like, I have a feeling like this could be a fun weekend where you're just out about, chatting with other people and meeting people, socializing, maybe doing things that are like creatively bent, like going to an art show or music concert or something that has to do with, socializing and also the arts or beauty or something around those lines. But yeah, so I guess that's what I would say about the full moon. Just beware of any type of confusion or uncertainty that causes anxiety, and just move through it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good time to take the pressure off and just go out, have fun, go for a walk. Don't try to, don't put too much pressure on yourself to figure it out right now.
Yeah. And I think that's a good idea, Shawna, going for a walk or a run or something that takes out any type of nervous tension that might come up, because what happens is if you're not active enough physically with Gemini energy, speaking as a Gemini Mars, it comes out in the body, and you feel that anxiety from not, being in just walking or running or just doing something. Mm-hmm. So I guess exhaust yourself and you'll be just fine. So let's talk about these tarot cards right quick, because they paint a very interesting picture, and not one I would have expected right away, but I think it makes sense. So I drew the Ace of Pentacles as the focus, and then the 10 of Pentacles as the grounding, which I was telling you earlier, Shawna, like, it's pretty amazing that we got 2 Pentacle cards in a time that there's basically hardly any Earth energy going on, because Pentacles relate to the reality and what's here on this earthly plane. So I love it because maybe that's what's missing, and that's why these cards are coming in, because to remind you of these things, filling the gap essentially. Yeah. So I also think these are very positive cards, because I think once again we're getting another message about some type of prosperous seed that is basically taking root right now and is really supported outside of us, either by people in the community, your loved ones, or just the universe supporting you upon starting out this, planting this seed and beginning this new cycle of material abundance. In a way. So Shawna, what do you think about that, and how there seems to be prosperity this weekend if we stick with it and allow it?
Yeah, I think it's encouragement to have patience that whatever it is that we're planting will grow. And whatever it is that we're planning, whatever it is that we're dreaming, what we're starting to know that, like, yes, this is good, and to trust that it will grow and develop, and that there will be abundance in maybe all of the ways. That doesn't have to mean financial abundance. It might, but it could just even be, loved ones and friends and joy and happiness and all of these things. So I think it's encouragement that whatever it is that our heart is really in, that we're putting into the material world, like, yes, this is good, and continue.
Yes. Stay grounded and realistic, basically. And I really think, Shawna, it just really plays into the message once again to, like, not doubt, the authenticity of good fortune. Which can come up, at this time. And with that Neptune T-square and that potential for doubt, to be able to live the dream, as we are titling it, I feel like these cards are really saying, good fortune is here. You just have to recognize it and not, doubt the fact that it's here. And that can happen if you've been through some shit. Speaking from experience, if you have, it's really hard to like pump yourself up to be like, okay, not this time around, like, it's, Jupiter's shining on me now. And that's the thing is Jupiter is trining Neptune. So it can kick up that, it really can kick up that self-doubt by flowing easily with it. But at the same time, I think what Neptune's trying to communicate is a benefit to our growth and expansion. So yeah, don't look the gift horse in the mouth and just accept any good fortune that comes your way for the most part. And just, plant your intentions with whatever maturity and wisdom you have from what's came before, because we've all learned a lot this year, and in our whole lives, of course. But this year has been quite a doozy that has been working towards a lot of these moments that we're having. I think it's a journey we're on, right? It's our own personal journey that we're all on.
Definitely.
So, all right. So some questions to take away from all this Neptune action and the full moon. I'd ask myself, with the full moon approaching and some uncertainty in the air, can I ground myself to move past any unknowing so I may believe in the current potential that surrounds me? I would ask, knowing that spirit is kicked up a notch right now, will I take the time to go within to find the inspiration and hope that is currently available? Can I connect with something higher than myself to get creative with all possibilities? And then lastly, I would ask, do I trust the prosperity of my visions? Can I relinquish any doubt about my good fortune so that I may live the dream?
Amen.
Amen to that. Oh, all right, Shawna, what have we learned? We've learned so much. Okay, well, we've learned that this week is about talking about a revolution within our own lives and how we are starting certain things that are taking us to new places and essentially reviewing things to help us best get there. Because we got that Mercury conjunct Saturn and then Mercury also stationing retrograde. So we're getting real with ourselves. Real inner talk is what should be going on for the next couple of weeks. We got Mars opposing Uranus in Libra and Aries. And so we're going to feel that urge, that bow is pulling back, and we feel the tension to act in some way. So let's do that the best way we know how. And then also we've got, all these Neptune. We've got Jupiter trine Neptune, the sun square Neptune, and that full moon in Gemini, where we're living the dream. And we are basically, in order to live the dream, we have to get past certain anxieties and uncertainties in life to really have faith and hope in our vision. So Shawna, I know you have an excellent action item for our listeners, so please share.
I do. So this week's action item, I want you to write a little note next to your desk, your workspace, or maybe even your bathroom mirror. So this I'm taking directly from The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. It's one of my favorite tasks that she gives to inspire faith and dedication. So she suggests writing a little note, and she titles it "Dear God," but you can substitute whatever speaks to you. You can say "Dear Universe," "Dear Shiva," "Dear Goddess," whatever, or just, to the higher source, to my higher self, etc. But you say, "Dear God, I'll take care of the quantity. You take care of the quality." And you sign your name, and then you post that in your workspace, preferably, or anywhere else that you feel like you need a little bit of inspiration. And I have this posted in my desk. I really like it because the whole idea behind it is that we just have to do the work. We just have to take the next steps. And the more that we do, the more that we put effort into something, the more that possibility opens up, and the more that the universe or God or goddess, etc., the more that we're taken care of because we've done the things that we need to do. And so the universe can support us because we've done, it's this co-creating kind of process.
I love it. Everybody needs some support, right, Shawna? We have to have things like that keep us on the right mindset, it's like that guiding us home in a sense. Like, don't forget.
Yeah.
Stay with us.
Yeah.
So if any of you are doing those, we'd love to see, comment or tag and let us know how you're feeling about these action items. So it's a good way to get involved.
Definitely. And of course, another way to get involved is to become a patron of the podcast to show your appreciation and to get those super cool show notes.
Yes. And Astro Basics cheat sheet so that you can help follow along every week. If you're like, what the heck are they talking about? This will help you follow along more. So come on down and check that out. It's feminineprinciplepodcast.podbean.com. And that's where you can access to become a patron. And you can do so at Feminine Principle Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. We have all types of links that will get you right there. But speaking of Facebook, what do we have to remind them about?
Full Moon Facebook Live. Yeah, so we're really excited to chat with you live about the astrology for the upcoming full moon. So just a reminder that our full moon Facebook Live event is on Friday, December 1st at 12:30 p.m. Pacific time, which is 8:30 p.m. Universal time, and Friday, December 1st at 12:30. Saturday, December 2nd at 6:30 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time.
Yes. So mark those calendars. And like we said earlier, if you have anything that you would want us to discuss or bring up, shoot us an email or an online thing, or, we're out there all over the place. So we'll get it. We'll add that in. So speaking of where we're out there all over the place, you can find me. You can find me at energeticprinciples.com. And you can also find me on Instagram and Facebook at Energetic Principles. And just a note, if you're a local here in San Diego, I have 2 events going on the weekend of the full moon. On Saturday evening, I'll be down at the South Park Walkabout outside of my friend's shop, Warshaw's Provisions, and I'll have my own tin can trailer that's like an Airstream. So I'll have a tarot trailer going on, and I'll be out there giving readings for people during the walkabout if you want to come to that. And I'm also doing an event with my good friend Joanne, who's doing fancy fondue down in Chula Vista. She's a personal chef that sets up these wonderful events where people get together and meet and just talk and have a good time. And she makes wonderful food, and I'll be out there providing tarot as well. And so Chef Joanne is her handle on Instagram. So Shawna, where can they find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram, YouTube, or Facebook under Neo Feminine Astrology. And something new that I have for all of my peeps is I've finished the 2018 Moon Journal. So I'm really excited about it. Yeah. It's definitely a labor of love. It's a journal that guides you through every single moon cycle. So for every single new moon and full moon, there is a description, a list of reflection questions, and of course my favorite, an action item. So you can find out more about that under any of my social media outlets. Yes,
because everybody needs a full moon journal. Ain't that the truth? Or moon journal just in general. Yeah. So that's wonderful. Congratulations, Shawna. I'm glad you got that out. And to any of our listeners who listen to us, you know that it's going to be quality because you already know all the wonderful things she has to say. So check that out. So Shawna, do you have any last words for our listeners this week?
Yeah, sending lots of love and asking that if you enjoy this podcast, please leave us a 5-star rating and review on iTunes. That helps us to get higher in the searching on iTunes, and it helps us reach more people. So do that, and then also make sure that you are subscribed so that you get future episodes the moment that they are uploaded.
Yes, and they are uploaded every Sunday at midnight Pacific time. So just, come on down, give us a follow, and I think it downloads immediately, and it's ready for you when you wake up. So yes. So all right, everybody, I'm wishing you a wonderful week as well, and we thank you so much for tuning in. So until next time, may the stars be with you.
Namaste.